Hello, everybody. This is Natalie Robinson Bruner. I'm with Glad Ed Solutions, where we are working hard creating solutions for personal and organizational development. And we have Jordan Fickess here from Common Threads. I don't want to introduce you because you have such a great introduction all on your own. If you want to go ahead and jump in and introduce yourself and let everybody know who you are.
Yeah, thank you, Natalie. So as you said, I'm Jordan Fickess. I'm the Vice President of Communications and Culture for an organization called Common Threads. So we're a national wellness nonprofit that provides cooking and nutrition education for children and families in our 12 markets, which includes Miami, Chicago, LA, New York, and several others. So in my role, I oversee the marketing, communications, and human resources functions for the organization, and I've been with Common Threads since early 2019.
Awesome. Thank you for being here with me today. I truly appreciate it. So just a little bit more about the introduction. So where did you and I sort of first meet, if you want to throw that in? It was I think a fun meeting. So
Yeah, so I remember being part of United Way of Miami-Dade. Common Threads is one of the impact partners that's worked with United Way for many years. We were all offered the opportunity to have people sit in on your burnout prevention course, which I think was early in the summer. So we were a few weeks into COVID-19. We had a better understanding of it. I think the timing of it came really nicely because all of our organizations as nonprofits, we were all trying to be part of the bigger solution, but at the same time dealing with our own internal situations, which was limited funding in a lot of cases, having staff have to work even more than normal, which burnout is a reality for people in nonprofits, especially smaller nonprofits anyway, even before COVID. So I think it was really nicely timed, and it was great to meet you with that 2-hour training that we all did.
yes, it was fun. I really enjoyed it. So sort of as you talk about burnout, is the reason why you and I sort of first were introduced to each other. How does that sort of impact an organization?
Yeah, so I truly believe that the people behind an organization are its greatest asset. And I think that's especially true in a nonprofit setting, but I think that really transcends the discipline or industry that you're in. I think it's really important for people to feel that they're positively contributing, that they're productive on the job, but that they're also feeling their personal lives and that they have enough time to really enjoy their friends and their families and pursue their own personal interests outside of the 9 to 5, which I think is in air quotes, right? Because we know that 9 to 5 isn't true for everyone. But I guess work shouldn't, push beyond certain boundaries that it's encroaching on people's personal lives. I think when burnout exists within an organization, people become disengaged, and the productivity starts to suffer, and eventually people will make a choice to leave the organization. And sometimes it's an organization that they really wish they could have stayed at longer, but perhaps it's a situation that's gone on too long and they need a fresh start somewhere else. And we know, of course, that when someone leaves, especially when they're a high performer in an organization, there's some direct costs that the organization will face, and even the intangibles of institutional knowledge walking out the door is really a big deal. So as much as we as organizational leaders can minimize that, it's great for the employee, but it's also great for the organization as well.
You said it perfectly. That's sort of what we talked about for 2 whole hours, sort of crammed into 2 minutes. And so, as you talked about the disengagement, it almost feels like there are little phases where, you go through burnout, then they become disengaged, and then there's the turnover and leaving of the organization. And so as you start to stop the burnout, you really also want to look at how to engage a person. And so when it comes to employee engagement, within an organization, what is your viewpoint on how it should fit into an organization and the end results that happens when you actually focus on it?
Sure. Yeah. And I think it's, as we're all working more remotely now, more than ever, I think it's especially important because we're losing those opportunities to meet in person. But I really think leaders and organizations should want their employees to feel like they have a voice in the organization, that they should strive for their employees to feel like they're welcomed within the organization as well. There's so many different ways to measure that. And it's a really important situation, especially in these times. I think when employees are engaged, they will look out for the company's or the organization's best interests, right? So no matter who you are, I think we all have to acknowledge that the bottom line is so important. Whether you're working for a nonprofit, you're working for a corporation, whether you have 5 employees on the team or 5,000, the nonprofit's important, and there is a business case for employee engagement because of what we talked about a little bit earlier. You want your most productive, your most successful employees to stay with you so they don't go work for a competitor, right? And when your employees perform at an optimal level, they'll make great recommendations. Like I said, they'll look out for the organization and help you put out little fires before they become big fires. And hopefully they'll help the organization continue to grow, and they'll find a way to grow with the organization. I always struggle, when an organization has to post a fairly senior or even mid-level position and there are not internal candidates. Sometimes it's not feasible to offer the role internally for different reasons. But as much as you can promote from within and make sure that that person is ready to be promoted from within and is it would stand up next to an external candidate just as strong, if not stronger. That's a big part of employee engagement, I think, as well, or employee engagement at least can feed into that. And that's succession planning, right? That's really ensuring the long-term viability of your organization.
Definitely. I just want to throw in there just the organizational knowledge that comes with maintaining people within the pipeline of leadership development. There's just so many stories I hear from. We have a lot of people that work 25 years at the organization. And so what they know about what's happened and the impact of what's done and what hasn't been done is just amazing to sit down with them and to just hear the history and the knowledge to get a better framework of the organization and how to help move it forward.
Yeah.
And so I do appreciate the maintaining of that succession line. So I'm going to ask you, I guess it's a slightly personal question that I threw in there. For you and your organization, what sort of pain points were you sort of dealing with or looking to solve when you sort of decided to attend this training?
Sure. Yeah. So I think that, again, the training really came up at a nice time because we were just starting to realize, kind of what COVID was going to look like for the next couple of months. But I think beyond that, there's also a pre-COVID answer. So Common Threads employs about 38 employees across the country, but our reach is across 12 different markets. So we really cover a lot of ground with not a lot of people, which is a very typical scenario for a lot of nonprofits. It's best to not put your money towards staff time as much as possible, and there is a delicate balance there. But with COVID, leaders and staff within our organization were starting to realize that the quarantine was going to be here to stay. So while I think, everyone probably walked into this thinking that a few weeks would be just fine and we could all adapt and overcome, especially our employees with kids, were starting to looking at having kids that were going to be home while they were going to continue to have to work. From a professional context, our work was also changing rapidly. So we were having to really modify our programs to meet the needs of the people that we reach and really try to fulfill our mission in a different way. We couldn't do it face to face. We really needed to shift into areas we were not previously in. And that puts stress on the people who are doing the work, right? So this was a really very timely topic for our organization because I think it helped us get ahead of it, both from a leadership perspective and really think differently about burnout. But when we brought it to our staff, I think this also put some of the responsibility in their hands and let them know that they can look out for burnout within themselves. I think it's really a two-way street between the leaders in the organization and the employees themselves. And it becomes a one-on-one conversation between manager and employee.
Definitely. And so when you attended the Burnout to Engagement training, how did it help you sort of look at the problem and maybe create some solutions or strategies towards dealing with it?
Yeah, so I would say the biggest takeaway from the burnout I'm sorry, remind me of
Burnout
the
to engagement. It's okay.
burnout to engagement. I apologize for the burnout. So the biggest takeaway from the burnout to engagement training, I think for us, was that ability to empower our staff to know what that cycle looks like for them. So internally, I think we've done a nice job as an organization of trying to look out for burnout, and we've really launched a lot of wellness initiatives even before COVID, and throughout COVID, we've given some kind of random days off or early release days and things like that to make sure people are using their or taking some time, but also encouraging them. PTO doesn't go away just because we can't jump on a plane. um, but I think it was really helpful. It didn't start this way. The first training that I did with you really, I think, was with organizational leaders and HR folks and whatnot. But I think that was really the most helpful thing for us. Sometimes, especially on a smaller team, you can walk away from those trainings and either not have the time to implement it or not know necessarily how to implement it. But I think the way that you rolled it out at the frontline staff level was so helpful.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. And so just to sort of, I guess, wrap up a little bit of our time together, would you recommend our training, Burnout to Engagement, and why?
Yes, I would absolutely recommend the Burnout to Engagement training, both for organizational leaders and for frontline staff. Like I said, burnout was a significant challenge, I think, for organizations even before COVID-19. It's something that we've always had to look out for. But I think now in this pandemic context, it's really transformed this idea of burnout and really heightened this issue in a new way. So while I think, and I can relate to this, and maybe you too, being in Miami, we're not dealing with traffic as much, and we're not dealing with some of the some of the things that come with being in an office setting, which has been a reduction in stress. But there's been an increase in stress and anxiety for sure. Some people are personally facing health challenges within their families and within their networks because of people who are facing COVID, or job loss within their families, which is reducing income and access to food and healthcare, etc. So and you also look at even people who are doing pretty well during the pandemic. They've kept their jobs, but now their kids are going into month 5 or 6, with no end in sight, right, of having to do their work from home. And we kind of had a saying within the early days of COVID within our organization that we were all kind of transforming this idea of co-working. Now that the kids were at home, each home was becoming like a little WeWork hub, if you will, with new little desks set up everywhere throughout the house. But it's really a lot for people to handle. So certainly from a COVID perspective, I think having organizational leaders think about burnout and how they can prevent it, but putting it in the hands of employees is so important. And once we're out of the woods with COVID, burnout will continue. Like I said, it will continue to be something that employees need to think about. This concept of work-life balance is going to look different in organizations. There's, I think, as I alluded to before, there's sometimes this idea of 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, but for some people, it's going to look a little bit differently. And I think COVID has called that out. And I think the idea is really to try to, when the tricks to, where burnout comes from and what the patterns are, you can address it early. Both the employee can address it early for himself or herself, and the employer can address it early as well, and try to put those structures in place so that it's not an issue.
Well, thank you so much, Jordan. It's been a pleasure working with you in the first training, and then the subsequent training with Common Threads, and then the next training we're going to do with Common Threads. It's truly been an enjoyable experience, and I will definitely look forward to talking with you again. So thank you so much. And again, this is Glad Solutions. My name is Natalie Robertson Bruner, and I appreciate you. Thanks.
Great.